Shalom. First off, I'd like to give an all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. All right. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Green Millstone who rule well, who continue to teach us this truth, and salutations to you, I came out there doing the work of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. All right. So in the last part of this lesson, we looked over basically a recap of what happened at the end of the kingdom of the Babylonians, and now we have been introduced to this character Darius the Mede, who's going to be an important figure in the actual process of the Medes becoming the Medeo Persian Empire. All right, because this is a dual kingdom. All right, this is a kingdom that has two sides, which is why in the statue here, if you look at the statue here, this is why the statue is the two arms, right? Because one of them is the Medes and the other one is the Persians. You understand? So without further ado, we're just going to go and read these entries that I screenshotted from Wikipedia. All right. So it says Astyages, spelled by Herodotus as Astyages, by Ctesias, by Diodorus as Aspidas, was the last king of the Median Empire. The son of Caesarus, he was dethroned in 550 BCE by Cyrus the Great. His name derives from the Old Iranian, which means swinging spear or lance hauler. In the inscriptions of Nabonidus, the name is written Ishtuvegu. All right, so now we're going to go down to the part where it says his reign. All right, so it's going to start here. It says his reign was from 564 to 550. All right, according to Herodotus. And a lot of most of this stuff that we're going to get into, most of the accounts that I'm going to be reading, and the notes that I'm going to be reading off of are from the account of Herodotus, who is a pretty prolific historian. And this is what people who study the Bible, people who study ancient history, they usually go by, several writers, one of them being Xenophon, Herodotus, as well as the Josephus. These historians spent a long time kind of chronicling what was going on in their times. So his predecessor was Caesarus the Great, and his successor was Cyrus the Great. And this part right here is actually really important. All right. So that is who Darius the Mede is. So now here's a picture of the Persian Empire from the Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great from 559 to 530 BC. All right, so essentially here you see these territories like Lydia. All right, it was conquered by Cyrus in 547. All right, it says Media is conquered by Cyrus in 550. All right, and Persia is this really small area here, but eventually it gets taken over. See, it gets taken over by him, and then the Babylonian Empire was conquered by Cyrus in 539. Okay, so these are all, these dates are more or less ballparked. All right, but the more important part is to understand is that there are two kingdoms that have risen. All right, you have the Mede, you have Darius the Mede, and you also have Cyrus, who's going to come into the picture in a second. All right. So now this is a historical context from a website that I got from one of the apostles called JesusWalks.com. And it says, according to the king's list compiled from Herodotus and the Babylonian Chronicle, which are cuneiform tablets, Caesarus reigned 624 to 585 BC. He developed the United Median State. He developed the United Median State by bringing together the Iranian tribes and conquering territory. He formed an alliance with Neo-Babylonia against the Assyrians, sealed by the marriage of his daughter to Nebuchadnezzar II. This is something that we went over in the previous lesson. It says the Medes were instrumental, along with Babylon and allies, for the fall of the Assyrian kingdom. Caesarus was followed by his son Astyages as king of the Medes, reigning from 585 to 549 BC. During the time of the Persians were one of six tribes that made up that made up the United Medium State. Others included the Medes, Scythians, and the Parthians. In 553, Cyrus the Great, king of Persia, rebelled against his grandfather, Astyages, king of the Medes, and won a decisive victory over him in 550 BC. After this, the Medes were now subject to their close kin, the Persians, who now ruled over and expanded the Medeo Persian Empire. When Cyrus conquered Babylon in 539 BC, the Medes and the Persians took over the territory of Neo-Babylonia and ruled over the largest empire so far known in the West. Okay? So, a lot of that was like, you could just, you take it for what it is, right? There's no need to break down. But what I will say is that this is something that's very common in these ancient kingdoms. All right, this was common. This is very close to what happened with the Babylonians. All right, the same people. The Babylonians were essentially the same as the Assyrians. They were the same people, and we went into the biblical genealogy in the last lesson, and we showed that. And then this is the same thing. The Medes were now subject to their close kin. Why? Because these territories were made up of various tribes, which are all from the same people. All right. So now we're going to speak about the invasion. All right. So in 539 BCE, Cyrus invaded Babylonia. Historical reconstruction of the fall of Babylon to Persia has been problematic due to inconsistencies between the source documents. Both Babylonian chronicles and the Cyrus Cylinder describe Babylon being taken without battle, whereas the Greek historians Herodotus and Xenophon report that the city was besieged. The biblical book of Daniel notes the king was killed. According to Xenophon, Belshazzar was killed in this conflict, but his account was not widely accepted. Nabonidus surrendered and was deported. Gutian guards were placed at the gates of the great temple of Bel, where the services continued without interruption. Cyrus did not arrive until 28 or 23 October, with Gobryas having acted for him in his absence. Gobryas was made governor of the province of Babylon. All right, so now we're going to go into the scripture here. This is Daniel chapter 8, verse 1. And it reads, "In the third reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, Daniel. After that which appeared unto me at first. And I saw in a vision that it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace which is in the province of Elam, and I saw in a vision I was by the river Ulai. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher, and the higher came up last. And I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beasts might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great." Salakia. This is talking about the rise of that kingdom, of the Medeo Persian Empire. It says, and I was concerning, behold, and he goat came from the west, and the face of the whole earth, and he touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes, and he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen before the river, and ran into him in his fury and his power. Then I saw him come close to the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him. And he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore, the he-goat waxed very great, and he was very strong, and the great horn was broken, for it came up, for it came up four notable ones towards the four winds of the heaven. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great, toward the south, and towards the east, and towards the pleasant land. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and cast down the host and the stars of the ground, and stamped upon them. All right. So this is again talking about, this is very similar talk to kind of the dream that that Nebuchadnezzar had, is very similar to the vision that Daniel had in, I believe, in chapter 7, I believe, where it's talking about that the beast that has wings of an eagle and the face of a lion, I believe, roughly paraphrasing. This is talking about the Persian Empire being overtaken and consumed by the not the Persian Empire, Salaki, the Medial Empire. All right, this is talking about the Medes being overtaken by the Persians. All right. So now we're gonna get into the history of Darius the Mede and Cyrus Cyrus the Great according to Herodotus. Because here, if we remember here, it said here the Medes were instrumental along the Babylon and allies to the fall of the Assyrian Empire. Okay, it says Cyrus followed his son Astyages. Okay, so essentially Astyages and Cyrus the Great have beef. They have a long-standing rivalry. All right, this is the part that I wanted to look at. It says in 553 BC, Cyrus the Great, king of Persia, rebelled against his grandfather. All right, so they're family members. All right, they're related, very closely related. All right, so in the next lesson, in the next part, we're gonna go over the history of Cyrus and Astyages and what the problem is between them, and why did Cyrus make it a point to overthrow his grandfather. All right, so I hope this lesson was edifying. Until next time,